Hello, my name is Kiriath, and today we are going to talk a little bit about finding the motivation to paint models. And this is prompted entirely by a message I received on Twitter on Tuesday, actually. I meant to cover this before and do another, a video on this earlier this week, but it's been one of those weeks where I just have not had time to do anything. I've been looking after my two daughters by myself for the last few days, and they're lovely, but oh dear God, do they take a lot of time, attention, effort. It's just been no breathing space whatsoever. So we're doing it now. But in a way, that's not too bad. It is Friday. Friday is a great time to get a bit of motivation for the hobby. And speaking of which, it would be helpful if there was something like a community spotlight, like you would find maybe on this channel if I made them. I'm going to talk to you about that at the end of this video. I do have an update on that. I've just been trying to find the right way to phrase it, because essentially what it boils down to is some people don't want other people to have nice things, is what it comes down to. But I'll put a timestamp in the description, so if you want to skip the actual content of the video, you can. You might want to. You might have clicked this and gone, actually, no. But I will stay for the update. I'll explain what's happening with that at the end of this video, because it is relevant to this conversation, and that was one of the reasons it was started, motivation and inspiration. And it's not providing either at the moment, because making it is proving to be a challenge. So, let's talk about motivation to paint models. So the message that has spurred this reads, could you possibly do a video on motivation to paint models? I have Thousand Suns, Word Bearers, Plague Marines, Tyranids, and Salamanders armies that I have no motivation to paint, even though they're all primed, and my general motivation for the hobby has dropped off significantly recently. I actually have a fair bit of experience with this myself, because I made a video, I want to say last year sometime now, talking about a complete lack of motivation, just talking about burnout, essentially. I had all these big ideas, all these plans in my head as what I wanted to do. I started collecting multiple different armies, and I never actually got anywhere with them. It was a case of assembling part of them and then go, oh, I'm not that interested. My solution to it was not ideal and not something that is available to everyone. It's not something that everyone can pull off or even wants to pull off, which was to just sell all the stuff that I hadn't made a start on and restrict myself to 1 or 2 projects max. That was my solution to it. I don't know whether it was technically a good solution, but it did work for me personally. However, since then, I have had a similar issue occasionally, but I found much, I say better ways to deal with it. Whatever method works for you is the way to deal with it. But I found a way that was not quite as drastic as just selling off all the stuff that I hadn't got around to building yet. And I am actually currently going through a similar thing. I'm having a motivation issue with one of my armies, and admittedly the reason for that, I know what the reason is, and it's something that I know will pass, and I'll be able to kick myself up the arse and get out of it at some point, but it's still something that is annoying and unpleasant at the moment. And the motivation thing for me is my Emperor's Children. I'm actually struggling with that. Not the building. The building's fine. I love building models. I cannot get enough of building and converting models. It's my favourite part of building an army. But the painting side has never been my strong point. It's never been something I've been particularly good at. And when it comes to my Emperor's Children, they require a lot more precision and a lot more care and a lot more concentration and just effort full stop than the other current project I have, which is the dumb Dreadnought army, which, there, all of them, that lot. So I've currently got 8 Dreadnoughts complete for that army. There's a 9th right here, who is currently being worked on, which is an old Ironclad Dread, Forge World Ironclad Dread, which I found in a bits box, just the entire thing, which is a ludicrous thing to happen. How do you find an entire Forge World Dreadnought in a bits box? I don't know, but I did. Didn't have any weapons for it though, so I had to improvise some. And I've also got this lad that I picked up on Monday when I went to Warhammer World, which is going to act as a Leviathan, hence the Gravflux Bombard and the Leviathan Siege Claw. The autocannon is just because, why would you not do that? Look at it. Obviously, it's actually a Chaos Decimator siege engine, which wasn't available for ages, and then I noticed it was, and so my plans to buy a Contemptor were removed completely, and I bought that instead, as you do. My motivation for my Dreadnoughts is way up. It's way up, because it's simple. Because I approach each Dreadnought and each conversion essentially with the mindset of, now, how do I make this borderline heretical, or in the case of the Decimator, 100% heretical, and how silly do I want it to be? And if the answer is really heretical and really silly, you end up with things like the Decimator or a Skaven Warp Lightning Cannon on top of a Dreadnought that's only got one arm. That kind of thing happens. They're also incredibly simple to paint. They require no effort, basically, to paint. And that's great for me, because I'm not a great painter, and I like methods that just are easy and quick. They just get a spray of Army Painter bolt gun metal, and then they get washed to oblivion with Nuln and Sepia, and then I slap a bunch of rust on, get some green on the cabling and any bits that look interesting, and that's about it. That's the whole thing. It requires very little effort, it requires very little attention, it requires very little concentration either, because I want them to look battered and weathered and worn, and the rust is almost a secondary colour, essentially. So the more of it, the better, and it doesn't really matter if it goes in places that ordinarily you wouldn't want it to go, because that's kind of the point. Now, the reason for me having motivation for that is, as I say, simplicity, speed, lack of concentration. Now, this is all entirely down to the not great, mental health situation I'm in at the moment. My mental health is not good at the moment. I know it isn't. I am dealing with it, but that doesn't automatically fix it, if that makes sense. So projects like that are absolutely great because they require very little of the things that right now I lack, which is, focus and enjoyment, basically. I find very little enjoyment in stuff at the moment, but building is one of those things that just stays through. And building the dreads doesn't require too much attention. It doesn't require too much effort. It doesn't require too much thought. My Emperor's Children, on the other hand, the whole point of this army is to be the best army I've made. It's to be the one that's the most well-painted, the one that's the most coherent in terms of its conversions. It's to essentially fill not a gap, but to live up to the mental image I have of a particular force. There is no mental image for the Dreadnought army, it's just what I fancy doing at the time, but the Emperor's Children, everything I'm trying to do with them is very specific to what I think it should be. It's an idea that I've had in my head for I don't know how long. It requires focus, it requires effort, it requires concentration, it requires me to actually be careful. And I don't have the motivation for these guys at all, because my head's just not in that space right now. Now, it's not quite as bad as having 5 armies that are primed and ready for paint, but you don't know what to do with them and you don't have the motivation to paint them. After all, I know the reason for my lack of motivation for all of my projects. I also know that it will pass eventually, whether it passes tomorrow randomly, as these things sometimes do with depression, or whether it takes another 6 months. It will sort itself out, or I will find a method to deal with it and it will disappear then. When it comes to having a significant number of unpainted models, though, that is where things get more and more tricky. And indeed, the number of it might be one of the key factors. See, if you've got 5 armies, Word Bearers, Plague Marines, Tyranids, Salamanders, and Thousand Sons, that's 5 forces that you've got there that you just don't know what to do with. You just can't bring yourself to do anything with at all. The number might be part of the issue. The more unpainted models you have, the more it stacks up, the more it's going to feel like a chore to actually get around to paint them all. In my experience, anyway, that's something that I know I've had trouble with in the past. You buy new stuff because you look at it and you go, yes, that's awesome, I want to own that, I want to build it, great, I'll add it to the force. You get it home, you put it together, you prime it, and then you look at the rest of your hobby space and go, oh shit, there is an entire army that I haven't actually done anything with before this. What the hell do I do now? That's something that is not unique to me, and it's not unique to you. I think everyone does that at some point. That thing of you buy the new thing because you really want the new thing, but then you look at what you already have and guess what? You haven't built or painted any of the other new things you've bought either. Eventually it stacks up and it goes from being something that you do for enjoyment and relaxation to something that you feel like you have to do. I mean, if you don't paint them, then you've wasted your money. If you don't put them together, then what was the point of spending that cash? It's something whereby you kind of build these things up in your head to the point where you just don't know how to tackle them. I suspect that might be part of what's happening here. And I only say that because I've had this experience myself where I've let a bunch of projects build up and I've got nowhere near completing one before moving on to another, and then I've moved on to another, and then another, and before you know it, you've got a bunch of stuff ready to go, but no actual drive to do it. A couple of things that I would try, genuinely, for this, and things that I have found sort of work a little bit for me, now that I've found ways of dealing with this stuff. Firstly, I would suggest picking one, which will be a hard thing by itself, but maybe, if necessary, like write a list of pros and cons as to what you like about that particular force, the things you enjoy most about them, the things that you don't enjoy, the things that you might think would be a pain, and take the other 4 and put them somewhere that you can't see. Put them in a box, put them in a carry case, whatever you've got, stick them out of sight and go, right, I don't have 5 unfinished projects. I've got 1 unfinished project. And you might be lying to yourself, but if that's what it takes, then that's what it takes. Treat it as being, this is the thing I actually want to do. The rest of that stuff is for when I've done it. If at some point I fancy a change, I might grab the Tyranids out. If I've completed the Salamanders, yeah, we'll go traitor for a little bit and we'll mess about with some word bearers. Try and limit your options in a way so that you're not looking at just all this stuff and going, okay, well, these 1,000 Suns are going to be in like nice blue and gold, but that would take a lot of effort, but there's also the word bearers sitting right next to them, and look at all the Tyranids sat behind those, and limit your options. Because if you limit your options, you might find that actually you do get the drive to tackle either whatever's left, or you might find that you put one of these armies away, decide, say, I'm going to go for Salamanders, and you sit down and you go, you know what, I actually don't want Salamanders, I do want to paint my word bearers. Swap them out in that situation. Limit your options down to 1 force. If needs be, limit it down to 1 squad, which actually leads on to another thing. Sometimes you just need to basically give yourself a kick up the arse. That can actually work. It's worked for me a couple of times, where you just don't want to do anything. You don't have the drive, you don't have the motivation, but you go, look, I've got an hour free on Wednesday night, so let's sit down, take this one fucking model that has been sat there looking at me for the last year and a half and get some paint on it. Even if you just, again, using salamanders as the example, even if you just take a single salamander and you make the dude green instead of black, that is something. And seeing that one dude green instead of black might actually make it so that you go, I mean, now I just need to make all the other dudes green because that one guy being green is getting on my nerves. Even if that's what ends up out of that, it can sometimes kick you into doing it because you feel like you need to, but then you start and actually find yourself enjoying it. That's another thing to try. Don't look at what needs to be done, look at what you want to do. You know, you might look at all those armies and go, well, actually, if I paint this up, I'll have a 750 point force. Or if I paint that, then I'll have a 1,500 point force. Or you just look at all the models you've got and you go, okay, which would be the most fun to paint? Forget about what you need. Forget about how many are left. Forget about how many models you've got to begin with. Just pick the one that you think would be the most fun to paint. Pick it up, paint it, and if you enjoy it and decide that, I'm feeling it again, let's grab another one, great. If not, then you've done one, or at least you've started one, put it down and just walk away for a bit. Come back, find another one that you might want to give a try, and give it a try. And again, if you find that suddenly, I am enjoying this, great. If not, it's not the end of the world. You can take a break and come back. I think when you get that amount of stuff, when you have so much piled up, it just becomes like a looming responsibility. It goes from being something you do to relax and something you do for enjoyment and for fun, and becomes a task that you have to complete. That's when it starts to get dangerous, because then you just end up like with massive burnout for the rest of the hobby as a whole. It's like you don't want to paint, you don't want to build, you don't have anything to, you haven't got a finished army to play with. Everyone else is playing with finished armies, but I've got all these that are in progress and I'm not really doing anything with them. And it will kill the rest of the hobby for you. You need to step away before that happens. And that's, I guess, the other bit of advice, which is that a hobby is something that you do for fun. It's something that you do to enjoy yourself. It's something you do to relax, to connect with other people. If you don't feel the motivation for that hobby, then don't do that hobby for a bit. It's not a commitment. It's not a marriage. You're not wedded to the hobby. You can take a break if you need to. If you need to take those models and go, okay, I need to just not look at this shit for a little bit because it's too much. There's too much here. There's too much to paint. There's too much to focus on, and I can't bring myself to touch any of it. Take them away. Put them away. Don't chuck them out. Don't sell them. Just put them in a box, put them out of the way, and go and do something else for a bit. You don't have to be connected to the hobby 24/7. You don't need to be living and breathing Warhammer 40k your entire life. If you're not feeling it for a bit, then just take a break. Sometimes that's all you need. Sometimes you just need to step away for a week, 2 weeks, a month if you really need to. Sometimes you just need to walk away from an aspect of something that you used to enjoy and go, I'm not feeling this right now, and if I keep forcing myself, I'm never gonna bring it back. I'm never gonna just revert to just, oh yeah, no, I am suddenly feeling it now, having just stared at it for the last 2 weeks. Sometimes you just need that space, you need that break. And if that's what you need, then do that. Maybe you take 2 weeks off. Maybe you just don't think about it for 2 weeks. You put it out of sight, out of mind. And then 2 weeks later you go, you know what, I will give it another go. I'll pick a model I like and I'll just see if I can get some paint on it and see what happens. That might be enough. You might need longer. You might go for 2 days and go, I actually miss trying to do something with this. Let's try it again. But you need to do something to just lessen the impact of how much stuff you have to deal with. And sometimes walking away for a bit is the only way to do that. It's the only way to kind of, I guess, break free of that cycle of just not being able to process how to deal with your backlog, essentially. Give any of those things a try. Any of them in any order, basically. If you do want to take a break, then take a break. If you want to just try and paint a single model, then do that. If you want to try and force your way through it, just be aware that it might make things a little bit worse, or it could make things better. You know yourself best, so if any of that, like, advice makes you think, I might hate life if I try that, then don't do that, obviously. But yeah, it's a difficult thing to deal with because everyone experiences it in a different way, and it's a difficult thing to break out of, just because once you're in that position, once you're in that point of like feeling as though you can't actually bring yourself to paint, then how do you suddenly reverse that? It either takes effort or it takes walking away for a while, and both of those things are not fun things to do when it's a hobby that you've invested so much time and enjoyment into. So I do hope that you do find a way to get around it. It might just be, as I say, that you just need a bit of time. Sometimes that's all you need, just a bit of time, just a break can reset everything and make things a lot more enjoyable and bring back that motivation that you had before. Okay, let's talk about the community spotlight. I'm going to try and keep this brief, informational, and a little bit vague all at the same time. There is a bit of a roadblock when it comes to the community spotlight at the moment. You guys have absolutely smashed the hell out of that email account in a good way, with hundreds of pictures of submissions. There's like 800 genuine submissions at this stage, which is insane and brilliant. I'm one person. It takes a lot of time to filter through and make sure everything is legit, and it's a lot of stuff to just process as a whole when it's one person dealing with that number of things. As I said in the video, currently my mental health is not good. My headspace is all kinds of fucky. It's getting worse. I know it's getting worse. I'm doing all the things that you are supposed to do. Don't worry. It's not like I'm ignoring it. I'm not going, I'll be fine, it'll pass. I know myself and I know how my depression works, and I know that it is not getting better. I'm doing all the things you should. I've gone to the doctors. I'm getting therapy. I'm doing plenty of exercise. All of that stuff. I'm doing the things that I should do. But for whatever reason, currently, it's not helping very much. I'm just getting worse by the day. I've had to enlist a couple of friends. I say enlist, they volunteered. A couple of friends are going through the email account to essentially remove some non-genuine submissions that keep cropping up, and they are of a nature that I do not want to deal with at the moment. Now, that might sound childish, but it's not a case of me going, oh no, I can't be bothered. It's a case of, as I said, knowing myself, knowing what I should and should not be dealing with, and these are things that I should not currently be dealing with. So they very kindly offered to do that instead. What they're going to start doing is essentially forwarding submissions to a different address, which I'm not giving out publicly, so they are essentially going to be acting as the filter for that account. Now, they're not under any instructions to just not pass through actual pictures of models and shit. Don't worry about that. That's not what they're going to do. They're going to be forwarding the stuff that should go in videos, and I don't have to see the rest, is how that works. So that is what is currently happening with the Spotlight. I know it's a pain in the arse. I know that I haven't done it for ages, and I know that's disappointing, and I do apologise for that, but at the end of the day, to be perfectly honest, I have to put my health first, is what it boils down to. I would prefer to not do the community spotlight but still be able to make videos for you guys for like a month or two than try and push through and just wind up not doing anything related to the channel or the community as a whole for months on end. You know, I've got to split things off where I need to split things off, and this is something that I had to get help with because I'm not dealing with it by myself. I could try, but I know that would be bad for me. And to be honest, if you do something that you know would be severely bad when you already know that you're not good, that's just not smart, and I might not be especially clever, but I'm not that fucking stupid. So that is where we are with that. The situation is being dealt with. The community spotlight will come back. You just need to give us a little bit more time to get it running smooth and just how it should have been to begin with. Okay? So that's what's going on with that. I hope some of the advice in that video was helpful for you. I apologise again for the delay in community spotlights, but yeah, that's the reasoning for it. Yeah, I think that'll do. Thank you very much for watching. Feel free to click all the things, Patreon video, subscribe, all of that shit. Click it if you like. Especially, I very rarely do this, but especially Patreon. And if you are buying 40k stuff in the UK, then do the affiliate link in the description if you want to, because the second, third, fourth, fifth, how many ad apocalypses have there been recently? I don't fucking know over the last few years. YouTube's just an absolute disaster zone. So that would, as all the other creators say, really help me out. I fucking hate that phrase. You can do that if you want. If you don't want to do it, then don't. I'm not demanding it of you. It's just an option. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you for the next one. Toodaloo.